In our headlines on this Tuesday afternoon, April 18th, here in South Korea. The US shortens its list of electric vehicles that qualify for federal tax credits. And while Hyundai Motor Group is not on the latest list, pundits remain optimistic about future market prospects. We tell you why. And in a cabinet meeting earlier on this Tuesday, President Yoon Suk-yeol calls for a stern crackdown on drugs in the country amid related recent crimes targeting teenagers. Meanwhile, the UN Security Council fails to reach an accord on a unified response to North Korea's latest launch of a new solid-fuel Hwasong-18 intercontinental ballistic missile, with China and Russia placing blame on the US. We start over in the US. The Treasury Department there has shortened its list of electric vehicles eligible for federal tax incentives in line with its Inflation Reduction Act. Now, Hyundai Motor Group is not on the latest list, but market pundits here believe the short-term challenge will lead to long-term returns. Our Jeju explains.
The U.S. government announced on Monday local time that 16 electric vehicles would be eligible for subsidies of up to $7,500 in accordance with the detailed guidelines of the Inflation Reduction Act. All the 16 selected models are American-made, including Tesla's Model 3 and Model Y, Chevrolet's Bolt and Equinox, and Ford's E-Transit and Mustang. As a result, not only Hyundai and Kia by Hyundai Motor Group, but also Nissan and some American-made electric cars that were originally eligible for subsidies have been excluded from the list. The new guidelines for the IRA have reduced the number of eligible models significantly as battery requirements were strengthened in addition to the final assembly requirements in North America. If more than 50% of the battery parts are manufactured and assembled in North America, a subsidy of $3,750 will be given. An additional subsidy of $3,750 is given when more than 40% of the key minerals are mined and processed in the United States or FTA countries. In this regard, industry officials have analyzed that a decrease in the number of eligible vehicles overall is not the worst situation for South Korea, because the number of vehicles getting the benefits has been reduced from over 40 electric vehicle models.
In the long run, South Korea is actually going to benefit greatly from this because the estimates right now are that in a few years, South Korean firms from LG, Samsung, and SK on will make and basically be most of the batteries in the United States, up to 69% of them. And so while there will be short-term challenges for Hyundai and Kia, for South Korean battery manufacturers, this is going to be a boon.
In response to the IRA guidelines, Hyundai Motor Group is speeding up the construction of an electric vehicle and battery plant in Georgia, set to open by 2025, and it is also considering replacing the Chinese-made batteries for the GV70 model with North American-made batteries. Jeju, Arirang News.
Staying on the economic front, the government here is discussing the fate of fuel tax cuts this week as the current cap on related taxes is soon set to expire. Our business correspondent Shin Ha-young reports.
With oil prices hitting record highs around the world last year, South Korea has been offering a temporary concession on fuel to ease the burden on drivers. Currently, the tax cut on gasoline is set at 25%, while the rate for diesel is 37%. With the rate set to expire at the end of this month, the government will decide this week whether or not to extend the discounts.
We will make more proactive efforts to review the opinion of the National Assembly from the perspective of the burden on people's lives.
The finance minister's remarks came in response to a request from South Korea's ruling party to the government regarding continuing with the fuel tax cut. With a recent announcement by OPEC Plus about production cuts, oil prices are seemingly on the rebound, with prices in general likely to be affected.
Considering trends in general prices and oil prices as well as the burden on the people, we urge the government to actively consider extending fuel tax cut measures for the time being.
However, the government cannot extend the fuel tax cut indefinitely due to rising concerns about a deficit in overall tax revenue. South Korea recorded its greatest ever on-year tax revenue decline earlier this year. According to the Minister of Economy and Finance, the country's tax revenue for the first 2 months of 2023 came to around 54 trillion Korean won, or $41 billion, roughly $12 billion less than in the same period last year. With tax revenue and rising oil prices in mind, the government may look at a compromise option, meaning further fuel tax cuts at a lower discount rate. 신하영, Arirang News.
Also on the local front, President Yoon Suk-yeol has called for a comprehensive campaign against narcotics in the country amid recent drug-related crimes targeting teenagers. Do take a listen.
지난 10년 전까지만 해도 대한민국은 검찰, 경찰은 물론 해경, 보건당국, 세관 등 많은 기관의 협력과 노력으로 마약 청정국을 유지할 수 있었습니다. 그런데 어느 순간부터 정부 당국의 방치로 마약이 국민의 건강과 정신을 황폐화시킬 뿐 아니라 청소년의 꿈과 희망을 파괴하고 있습니다.
Presiding over a cabinet meeting earlier on this Tuesday morning, President Yoon also shared intentions to root out nepotism in the workplace, underscoring its violation of the country's constitution. He also urged relevant ministers to place priority on budget management to ensure productive government spending. On the security front, U.S. defense authorities have reaffirmed their commitment to their allies, including South Korea, amid their ongoing investigation into the rampant disclosure of classified documents. Our Yoon reports.
The suggestion that Washington has been spying on some of its allies, including South Korea, following the recent leak of classified documents, has put the South Korea-U.S. alliance in the spotlight less than 2 weeks ahead of a Yoon-Biden presidential summit. During a briefing on Monday, Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary Sabrina Singh said an internal review assessment is being conducted and that the Department of Justice is leading an ongoing investigation to better understand the scope and scale of the leaks, including getting a better assessment of what documents exactly were disclosed and where they surfaced online.
The Secretary and senior Pentagon officials continue to convene daily meetings to examine the scope and scale of this disclosure, as well as ensure that appropriate mitigation measures are being taken.
There is also some speculation that the leaked documents are forgeries. U.S. Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin and his South Korean counterpart Lee Jong-sup spoke last week, and both agreed that the classified document had been substantially forged. When asked about this, Singh said the situation is under review and refrained from giving specifics. And as to whether Washington would apologize to Seoul if wiretapping allegations turned out to be true, the press secretary reiterated that the U.S. commitment to South Korea is rock solid and that Washington has a positive relationship with Seoul. On the same day, National Security Council Coordinator John Kirby said that there had been no damage to partnerships with allies due to the leaks. Singh added that the relevant departments will provide the secretary with initial findings and recommendations within 45 days to improve the department's policies and procedures related to the protection of classified information. Yoon, Arirang News.
Over in Japan, top diplomats from Washington and Tokyo sat down on the sidelines of the G7 foreign ministers meeting and emphasized the importance of trilateral collaboration among South Korea, the U.S. and Japan to maintain a free and prosperous Indo-Pacific region. During their 20-minute talk earlier on Monday, the officials also reaffirmed the importance of joint efforts in response to threats posed by North Korea and the ongoing warfare in Ukraine. Also, according to a press release by the U.S. State Department, Secretary of State Antony Blinken congratulated his Japanese counterpart Yoshimasa Hayashi for the recent progress on diplomatic ties between Seoul and Tokyo. And over in New York, the United Nations Security Council has failed to reach an agreement over a possible response to North Korea's latest launch of a new solid-fuel Hwasong-18 ICBM, with China and Russia finding fault with the U.S.'s regional military drills. Our Ising-jae has more.
Last Thursday, North Korea fired its solid-fuel Hwasong-18 intercontinental ballistic missile for the first time. The United Nations Security Council responded by holding an open meeting at UN headquarters in New York on Monday, with the meeting being convened at the request of South Korea, the United States, and Japan. During the meeting, U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations Linda Thomas-Greenfield strongly condemned North Korea's repeated violations of Security Council resolutions, calling for a united response from the international community on what she called a threat to not just Northeast Asia, but also to world peace and security. Along with the U.S., other UNSC members, including Britain and France, expressed concerns over continued provocations from North Korea. But China again backed its ally, saying that United States military exercises near the Korean peninsula using nuclear aircraft carriers and B-52 bombers made North Korea uneasy. Russia's ambassador to the UN also slammed the U.S., saying that the UNSC meetings should not be used for political propaganda purposes, adding that additional sanctions against North Korea is illegal and unilateral and would not take into account the desperate situation inside the country. Meanwhile, in a statement carried by the state-run Korean Central News Agency, Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission of the ruling Workers' Party, Lee Byung-chul, accused the UNSC of engaging in domestic interference against Pyongyang. He also stressed that the North's advanced strategic weapons development is a legitimate self-defense measure aimed at defending itself from threats from the U.S. Lee also slammed the U.S. for calling the North's exercise of rights to self-defense a provocation and threat through the mobilization of the UNSC. The vice chairman is known to have led Pyongyang's nuclear and missile development since the early months of Kim Jong-un's rule in late 2011. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
On the entertainment front, BTS member J-Hope begins his mandatory military service on this Tuesday, becoming the second member of the group to enlist following Jin, who began his service last December. The 29-year-old will begin 5 weeks of basic training at an army boot camp in Gangwon-do province. His enlistment comes as the group's agency Big Hit Music earlier this month announced that he would fulfill his mandatory service as an active duty soldier in the army, but added there would be no ceremony for fans on the day of his entry. J-Hope hosted his last live stream on Weverse, a fan community platform, last Friday to say goodbye. In other news, China's gross domestic product jumped in the first quarter of this year following the end of its zero-COVID policy. According to China's National Bureau of Statistics, on this Tuesday, the country's GDP rose by 4.5% on year. Now, this is higher than an earlier Reuters forecast of 4%, but lower than the country's 5% growth target set for the year at the National People's Congress meeting last month. In the fourth quarter of last year, China's GDP recorded a 2.9% growth. South Korea is playing host to a large group of high school scholars from New York seeking first-hand experiences of K-culture. Our Kim Jung-sil met up with them.
Students from New York wearing traditional Korean clothing, hanbok, are visiting Gyeongbokgung Palace.
1, 2, 3.
They stop at every step to take pictures, as if to capture each moment. On this field trip, a total of 105 students from 5 schools in New York came to South Korea. Democracy Prep public schools teach Korean as a second language and have Korean culture classes. This is because the founder of the school spent time in South Korea and was dedicated to bringing Korean education and culture back to the U.S. One student said she enrolled in one of the schools because of her mother's interest in K-dramas.
When my mom first came to America, she was obsessed with K-dramas. She would watch them on cable, and she wouldn't understand the language, but she would read the subtitles. And she was always really involved in the culture.
Korean is really core to the starting of Democracy Prep, our school, and it's something that we also really value in terms of offering our students a perspective of a culture and language that is not something that they've seen before, most likely. We really value the Korean values around education.
In the afternoon, the students gathered at hiker ground near the Cheonggyecheon stream to experience the more modern side of Korea. Hiker Ground is run by the Korea Tourism Organization, which said this is a good opportunity for future generations to build friendships during a year when the two countries are celebrating the 70th anniversary of their alliance.
As you can see, the students are using these sets at Hiker Ground as backgrounds for their dances, just like K-pop idols.
In a K-pop dance class, students learn how to dance to one of the latest K-pop hits. Many of the students picked up the dance moves quickly and filmed their own music videos.
I think it was a fun experience, but I was a little nervous because it was really short. But I think I'm happy with the overall video. I think it was a good experience that really opened my eyes, and I do look forward to coming back to Korea eventually.
The students we met said they hope to use their knowledge and experience of the Korean language and culture in their future endeavors, and said this won't be their last time visiting South Korea. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
On the tech front, researchers here have developed a motion-sensing robot that looks to bolster safety at construction sites and more. Our Cho Sang-min reports.
Avatar is a film that opened our eyes to the new world of cinema, not just through its colorful and sharp computer graphics, but also with the technological imagination it succeeded in emulating on screen. One of the examples would be the technology that links Jake, the lead character, with the blue-skinned alien creature and makes it move freely according to how he wishes. And recently, local researchers in Korea have succeeded in bringing a part of that technology to actual life. The humanoid robot here makes the exact movements with its fingers, hands, wrist, neck, and waist of a person sitting in the driver's seat from far away. Because the user is wearing a type of headgear with a VR screen attached, he or she can see what the robot sees. The robot can sense the user's motions remotely and either turn on or off a switch, move heavy objects, and even shake hands. The technology is also equipped with highly sophisticated motion sensors and 4 infrared cameras that can detect the user's movements however subtle they are. And the overall user experience of it offers an additional feeling of presence and hands-on experience, as users can feel the weight in their arm when the robot is holding a heavy object. Another example of that would be the trembling of the arm when holding onto an electric drill. The team says all it takes to work is a wireless network to get it up and running. As of now, they have succeeded in operating a robot in Seoul from their Ulsan office.
The robot's vision and the data make it feel as if they are right inside it.
The team say the robot could be used in various hazardous working situations and construction sites, as it can carry out delicate and dangerous tasks. Cho Sang-min, Arirang News.
Flights to and from Korea's southern resort island of Jeju have been cancelled due to strong winds. According to Jeju International Airport, as of 1 p.m., 164 flights, 78 outbound and 86 inbound have been cancelled. A total of 480 flights have been scheduled for today, and accordingly, more flights may be cancelled later in the day. Weather authorities have issued a wind advisory for the island, with areas near the airport noting wind speeds of up to 27 meters per second, roughly similar to those seen during a typhoon. Strong winds are forecast to persist until the evening.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. Top Kremlin critic Vladimir Kara-Murza Jr. has been sentenced to 25 years in prison in Russia's latest crackdown on opposition figures. The sentence was handed down by a Russian court on Monday on charges including treason and spreading fake news about the Russian army. Kara-Murza is an award-winning human rights activist, a journalist, and a dual Russian-British citizen. The 41-year-old has been vocal in his opposition to Russia's war in Ukraine. He was arrested in Moscow in April last year, just hours after a CNN interview where he said Russia was run by a, quote, regime of murderers. He also denounced Russia's invasion of Ukraine in a speech to the Arizona House of Representatives in March of that year. It was the same month that Russia criminalized criticism of its military. The court's conviction has been denounced by Western governments and human rights organizations. Moving over to Sudan now, at least 180 people have been killed over 3 days of heavy fighting in a power struggle between the Sudanese army and the paramilitary Rapid Support Forces. The clashes broke out across the country on Saturday local time. The international community has called for peace, with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken saying there's a shared deep concern among allies. Meanwhile, the Intergovernmental Authority on Development has said that the presidents of Kenya, South Sudan and Djibouti will go to the Sudanese capital of Khartoum to try broker a ceasefire. The violence comes on the back of a proposal that would transition the country's military government to civilian rule and would see the RSF become part of the Sudanese army. The United States Federal Bureau of Investigation has arrested 2 men for allegedly running a secret Chinese police station in New York City's Chinatown. Both men have been charged with conspiring to act as agents for China and obstruction of justice. Prosecutors also charged 34 others who live in China in connection to the case. The operatives allegedly established the station on behalf of the Chinese Ministry of Public Security in early 2022 and harassed Chinese dissidents in the U.S. But it was closed just a few months later after operatives became aware of the FBI's investigation. The secret station is believed to be part of a global network of such facilities operating in 53 countries. Beijing denies operating the stations and called them service centers for overseas nationals. And finally, in the U.S. state of North Carolina, a man relaxing in his yard had a startling encounter with a wild bear. Surveillance footage from a doorbell camera shows David Oppenheimer relaxing in his lounge chair when the black bear casually strolls next to him. Both froze in shock after noticing each other, with the bear running away after a standoff lasting several seconds. Oppenheimer said that he had received a notification earlier in the day to keep an eye out for a wandering bear, but saw nothing on his outdoor cameras before going outside to enjoy the nice weather. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. Quick moving showers rolled in for the morning. It's gradually letting up from central regions, while the south coast and Jeju Island could see rain into Wednesday with heavier showers at 20 millimeters an hour at times. But along with rain, those of us in the west coast and Jeju Island are dealing with strong winds with a wind advisory issued. So Jeju Island will be rainy and windy all day today. Temperature-wise, highs are going up a couple of degrees higher in the capital this afternoon. Then summer warmth is ahead for Wednesday in Seoul with an expected high of 27 degrees Celsius. Meanwhile, southern provinces are having highs dropping down a couple of degrees lower today, hovering in the low 20s this afternoon. Air quality is normal to good nationwide today and into tomorrow. After today's rain, there will be days with partly sunny skies with occasional clouds, and tomorrow's summer warmth will be short-lived. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
That ends our Tuesday afternoon newscast. But do stay with us for our panel session coming up right after this break. Thank you for now.